What's up, everybody? Sorry, I was trying to set up my stream. It wasn't completely done. I am back. I have just a little bit more news, and then I have there's a 4 statewide fraud going on in Massachusetts and a couple other states. We're going to watch the press conference from that. And then there was a fired up hearing 2 days ago. I wanted to show it yesterday, but I just didn't feel good, with Ted Cruz leading the way in Minnesota for a Judiciary Committee hearing on the Somali fraud. So we are going to get into that. Hold on, why is my stuff not working? Welcome. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm having a little technical difficulties here. Oh, that's why. I didn't turn this on. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into some news, and then I'm going to get into these press conferences. So I hope y'all enjoy, and let's get this going. I can't see anybody in the comments. So if I miss you, much love. Hit a like, share, subscribe. Let's go. This one first. All right.
Is actually dying. But staffers who were just laid off think hating Trump should give them lifetime job security.
Journalists are under attack. What do we do? Yeah. The fourth richest person in the world, Jeff Bezos, owns the Washington Post. He could run it, and yet he refuses.
He refuses. Okay, they really don't understand capitalism, do they? To them, the only way billionaires like Jeff Bezos can redeem themselves is by funding their left-wing causes. Now, the Washington Post has been bleeding money. We all know that for years, more than $100 million by 3. And its internet traffic also declining. And with that, the Post's journalistic standards have also been sliding as well. Now, who can forget that $250 million lawsuit they had to settle, which was filed by Kentucky student Nicholas Sandmann? They falsely portrayed him as a confrontational young man in an encounter with a Native American. Now, as happens repeatedly, anti-MAGA bias at the Post overrode their objectivity. And time and again, the Post just gets it wrong. Remember how they played defense for Kamala when it came to the border, quibbling over whether her title was actually Border Czar, not about whether the border was actually secure? Then the Post tried to downplay Biden's physical decline, cognitive decline, by contending that it was conservative media that was using cheap fake videos to make Biden look bad. Oh, okay. That was another Biden Washington Post mistake. Now, look, I've been in the media business, I can't believe I'm saying this, for over 30 years. And I know, and I knew that if at any point in time my work on the radio, podcast, TV, writing stopped making money, I knew that I'd have to go back to practicing law. Ugh, yuck. So to all those displaced Washington Post staffers, and I know it's tough out there, I have a novel concept for you. Start producing content that people will actually pay for. And that's the angle.
Fox News alert. The FBI is conducting a third search at Nancy Guthrie's home. They've just cleared the streets and have established a wider perimeter. Investigators were seen on the roof of Nancy's home. And law enforcement were also tipped off to a vehicle of interest that was caught on camera outside of a convenience store. Police are currently on the lookout for this vehicle. All this just moments after officials say they've received another critical message. The note was emailed to the same local Tucson station that received the first note. The Guthrie family had asked for proof of life. Here's what KOLD anchor Mary Coleman told CNN.
Does it seem that that's what this letter is? Is it a response to those things, to those the pleas of Savannah and her siblings? Mm-hmm. And does it include that proof of life or any claim to that?
I can't disclose whether it includes that, but I will go as far as to say that it does seem like it is a response to some of those videos that were made.
The anchor later explained that the email contained sensitive information, and she's not at liberty to discuss it at the request of the Pima County Sheriff Department. This note was very similar to the first note.
Is there, would you say it's the same tone and tenor, or is there any shift?
Yeah, I would say it's just as coherent as the first. That's what, struck us as odd about the first one, is that, like you said, it was well thought out, clear thoughts put together well. And I would say that this second one, it has a very, very similar, the way that it was put together was very similar.
Whoever's sending these notes is highly sophisticated and is protecting their identity from the FBI.
This is not the same IP address, but it appears the sender used the same type of secure server to hide their IP address. So that's all that we know about the sender at this point, which unfortunately really isn't much. And this new note does contain something that the senders seem to think will prove to investigators that they're the same people or person who sent the first note.
It's been 6 days, and Nancy is without her medication. And when she was abducted, she sustained a bloody injury. This negotiation, if it even is a negotiation, is becoming desperate. A final deadline was set for Monday. TMZ, who received the first alleged ransom note, has been analyzing the contents and believes they have a clue about the geography of the kidnappers. Watch.
In the letter, it says they would return her back to Tucson. So they also give a time frame of how long it would take after they received the money to return her to Tucson. If you look at the time frame, then you say, well, you can draw a circle around Tucson to see how long maximum it would take to get her back there. This is Tucson right here. If you look at this red circle, that is the radius of the maximum amount of time it would take to get her back to Tucson.
If the note's not a hoax, the language would indicate that the entire Southwest, including most of Mexico, is the playing field. Now, if you live there and see something, say something. The clock's ticking. The kidnappers are in total control. Harvey Levin explains how.
The letter says, you will have no way of contacting me. This is the only contact. So that's why they're pleading for proof of life. That's why they are begging, because they have no idea how to get in touch with this person. So I don't think they know who sent it. And the person who sent it says, this is going to be the only contact, and you have no way of getting in touch with me. So they made that clear.
These ransom notes are coming from an untraceable address. If the second note is indeed legitimate and is in response to the two Guthrie family videos, then communication has been established. So what's next? Police are currently going door to door in the Guthrie neighborhood, checking doorbell and security cameras, just hoping for something, anything that'll spark a new lead. Most cameras aren't flagging because the neighborhood's kind of like a black hole.
And as you might be able to tell, there are almost no streetlights in this entire area. A lot of communities in Arizona take seriously what's called light pollution. They don't like to emit a lot of light. So it does beg the question of what someone can get away with here at night. And even if you do have a Ring camera or some type of security camera, is it going to be able to make out a particular human or car, or is it just going to be a shadow or a silhouette? Even if you have a camera on your front door, it may not see who's passing by.
Nothing. Our camera would not. We have a long driveway. You cannot see anything.
Right. And that
light pollution, I know. Whoever the abductor is had to have been familiar with the terrain or cased the neighborhood. TMZ says it has local written all over it.
It is interesting to me that we got this ransom letter, but also the other two media outlets that got the ransom letters were both located in Tucson. They were television stations in Tucson. So why would somebody who wrote a letter like this know about the local stations and send to the local stations if they have no connection to Tucson? It feels like there was a connection to Tucson with the person who wrote this letter.
And they must have known the blind spots at Nancy's house. We know her doorbell surveillance was disconnected. Authorities say it was physically removed. The whereabouts of that camera are still unknown. But what's even more suspicious is that 20 minutes later, a person was detected by the doorbell software.
With that 20-minute time gap, the cameras gets ripped off the doorbell, but then there's motion seen on the camera outside, 20 minutes later. What's that about? Some people in law enforcement wonder if the person took the doorbell camera off and waited to see if police arrived. Would that alert anything? Would that do anything? And then perhaps thinking the coast was clear, goes back to the house. We don't know. We don't know the specifics of what camera detected the motion either.
All this technology, and we have nothing yet. Nothing. That's why investigators are still pouring through highway surveillance footage to see if they can run plates or spot anything out of the ordinary. Remember that hours before her kidnapping, Nancy was being driven by her son-in-law. He dropped her off after dinner. Were there any cars following them? Fox got behind the wheel to check the route.
We're going to take you on a drive to her daughter Annie's home. So we're coming up on what looks like the first major intersection where you have lights on all four sides on the way to Annie's house. And so this is an area where we can see cameras. This was a 4.5-mile drive, 10 minutes going the speed limit. And we can see here at Annie's house, Savannah Guthrie's sister's home.
Detectives are analyzing that first major intersection. One of Nancy's neighbors reported a suspicious white van parked on the block days before. Was this a crew staking out the house? Was Nancy being followed the weekend before? Or is this just another dead end? Usually in high-profile criminal investigations, the public can be extremely helpful, but they can also slow things down and even whip up fake leads, like this fake ransom text demanding Bitcoin from the Guthries. Turned out that some whack job sent it. Here he is. The FBI picked him up and arrested him in LA. And here's a weird coincidence. 2 teens were arrested in Arizona in a home invasion tied to an alleged $66 million crypto plot on the same day Nancy Guthrie was last. And there's been a lot of second guessing. The local sheriff, who's been doing a lot of media rounds, may have dropped the ball in the critical hours when Nancy was reported missing. The sheriff didn't get the surveillance plane in the air on Sunday morning. It wasn't until the afternoon that we had eyes in the sky. This vital search and rescue aircraft needed to be in the air during the make or break initial phase. It's equipped with high-resolution thermal imaging cameras that can scan vast swaths of desert terrain. Because of a staffing issue, according to the Daily Mail, the plane sat on the tarmac. Since then, we've seen the FBI as being exploited. Intelligence analysts are the family. At this stage of the investigation, it's becoming pretty clear the kidnappers aren't a bunch of amateurs.
People have been asking, does it, this letter was very well constructed. It had structure. If you took this letter to an English teacher and said, give me notes on structure, on grammar, you probably would get no notes back. It's done by somebody, I believe, who is educated and really spent time. This was not something that took 5 minutes to write.
Finally, something I can agree with. It's Friday, so you know what that means. It's time to welcome tonight's guest. Well, he's been canceled more times than Chris Christie's gym membership. Comedian Rob Schneider. He always reminds crowds to tip the wait staff because he's one of them. Comedian Sherrod Small. This man keeps fit by jogging an ankle monitor. Former GOP Congressman George Santos. And she went from...
All right, I'm gonna go to the next one. I'm gonna skip the next one. I didn't know it was just gonna be all about that. I thought we were gonna talk something different. There we go. This one should be interesting.
Good morning. I'm here this morning to announce charges against 4 individuals for allegedly stealing the identities of more than 100 victims and using those identities to score more than $1 million in free government benefits that they themselves were not qualified for. These defendants used stolen identities from victims across the country in New York, Florida, Connecticut, Kentucky, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and here in Massachusetts. They also used the stolen identities of 6 juveniles to secure SNAP EBT benefits in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, spending tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars to purchase inventory for a restaurant in Massachusetts owned by the lead defendant, Raul Fernandez Vicioso, a naturalized citizen from the Dominican Republic.
You have to listen to these statistics. Over 34 million people in our country have diabetes. 20 to 25.
Fernandez Vicioso and his co-defendants, 2 of whom do not have legal immigration status and 1 is a green card holder, used the stolen EBT cards to purchase large quantities of expensive bulk food items, such as multiple pound packages of chicken, beef, and pork at various local wholesalers and food markets to stock their restaurant at no expense to themselves, but at considerable expense to taxpayers. As a result, they sold menu items at the restaurant at a complete profit, later wiring the fraud proceeds to individuals living in Venezuela and the Dominican Republic, among other places. The state of Rhode Island picked up on the fraud in June of 2024, when they identified SNAP EBT applications for 117 people, all of whom purported to be living in just 2 apartments in Providence. Rhode Island also discovered that many of the victims' identities also received SNAP benefits here in Massachusetts, based on information through data shared among the states. In June 2024, Rhode Island contacted the Massachusetts Department of Transition Assistance, DTA, to request additional information. Massachusetts DTA identified more than $115,000 in fraudulent SNAP benefits administered to the stolen identities that were also used to steal SNAP benefits in Rhode Island. All of the stolen identities were used by the defendants charged today to steal from American taxpayers. The USDA OIG is not aware of the Massachusetts DTA making any referral report to the USDA concerning this theft. These defendants did not stop with SNAP benefits. Not only did they steal more than $400,000 in SNAP benefits, they also stole over $700,000 in pandemic unemployment assistance from state agencies in Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Nevada. Let's be honest. It is no secret that there is rampant fraud across this nation. The charges announced today are just a snapshot of the bigger picture, not just in Massachusetts, but across the country. People exploiting our precious taxpayer money and government resources for their own personal gain. In fiscal year 2025, Rhode Island received over $340 million in SNAP benefits from the USDA. In fiscal year 2025, Massachusetts received over $2.6 billion in SNAP benefits from the USDA. These benefits are intended to enable low-income households to obtain a more nutritious diet by increasing their food purchasing power, not to stock someone's restaurant. Just last month, I stood here to announce charges against just 2 individuals with a $7 million benefit fraud scam involving SNAP EBT benefits here in Massachusetts. This is the tip of the iceberg. We are investigating many more benefit fraud cases in my office, and today's announcement is just the beginning. As you know, the president has named a fraud czar in response to the extraordinary amount of benefit fraud we are seeing across the country. As a result of the rampant benefit fraud we are seeing here in Massachusetts, we are naming a fraud coordinator in the U.S. Attorney's Office who will oversee and drive the fraud investigations in this office. The fraud coordinator will act as a primary point of contact for benefit fraud in the U.S. Attorney's Office and as a trusted advisor to me and my leadership when it comes to investigating and charging these kinds of cases. What we are seeing in our ongoing investigations warrants this type of attention, and you should anticipate seeing more and more of these cases coming here in Massachusetts. We owe this attention to the hardworking taxpayers who expect government officials to stop massive fraud schemes and to hold those fraudsters accountable. It is not particularly hard to identify these scams, but if you don't even care to look or prosecute those involved, essentially allowing criminals to steal vast amounts of taxpayer money with impunity, the scams will continue to proliferate unabated. We encourage anyone who knows anything about this type of fraud occurring to report it to the oversight.gov website using the site's link to the USDA OIG hotline. The information will be included in the press release that follows. In New England, we are fortunate to have the HSI Documented Benefit Fraud Task Force, which allows all of the federal agencies here today to work collaboratively to root out systemic fraud and abuse. With that, I will turn things over to the USDA.
On August 22nd, I told viewers that the road to artificial general intelligence was already bringing.
Good morning. My name is Sharmika Parker. I'm the special agent in charge for U.S. Department of Agriculture's Office of Inspector General here in the Northeast region. In this investigation, the defendants utilized fraudulent means to steal government Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, also known as SNAP. SNAP fraud remains to be an investigative priority for USDA OIG, and we will continue to help deliver justice to protect taxpayer dollars. On behalf of Inspector General John Walk, we commend the hard work of our special agents and our OIG support personnel who supported this investigative effort. Additionally, we appreciate the collaboration of our federal, state, and local partners. Thank you.
Department of Labor.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anthony D'Esposito. I serve as the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Labor. First and foremost, I want to thank the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Massachusetts for having and taking the proactive approach that they have. It's no secret that many of these cases have been presented to U.S. attorneys throughout the country in the last 4 years and have been ignored. This case is not a one-off. This is something that's happening throughout the United States of America. And when there's no checks and balances, when there's no guardrails in place, fraud ensues. I would like to thank from the Department of Labor Inspector General's Office, our special agent in charge, Malone, and ASAC Roberts for their leadership on this case. When Raul Fernandez takes his sentence today, it's over $1 million. $750,000 of that was a U.S. labor program in the pandemic unemployment assistance. The work that our agents are doing, collaborating with others, inspectors general, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office, is critical. And what is clear is that this, as the U.S. Attorney said, is just the beginning. I know when I speak for the Department of Labor Inspector General, we will come to every state. We don't care whether it's blue or red. Where there's waste, fraud, and abuse, we will root it out. The case title and actually the name of the restaurant was El Primo. For most of us probably know that in the Hispanic language, I'm half Puerto Rican, but primo means cousin or family. What the defendants in this case realized or thought was that the American people was their family and taking away from the vulnerable population. And I'm so thankful to work with partners up here and, of course, the leadership of the U.S. Attorney to hold them accountable and to let the American people know that, once again, this is just the beginning. Thank you.
HSI.
Good morning. My name is Michael Kroll. I'm the special agent in charge of Homeland Security investigations here in New England. First, just want to say thank you to our partners whom I share the stage with, U.S. Attorney Foley. The partnership, the work continues. It never stops for us. We are committed to that. As U.S. Attorney Foley said, HSI's Document and Benefit Fraud Task Force brings together multi-agency partners to disrupt and dismantle large-scale fraud networks. And today's arrest proves that. HSI remains committed to rooting out fraud and holding those criminals accountable. As you see in the news, our fraud investigations are widespread. I commit to you that HSI special agents across this country and across the world will pull every thread and leave no stone unturned until justice is served. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Temio. I'm the special agent in charge of the IRS Criminal Investigations Boston Field Office. I would like to begin first by thanking U.S. Attorney Leah Foley for having the press conference today. I'd also like to thank our law enforcement partners for their hard work and dedication for this important and impactful investigation. For many Americans who require government assistance, there's a process, a line to stand in, and the requirement to show financial need. But for Raul Fernandez, it was not a need, but rather his greed and complete disregard for U.S. law that drove his desire to defraud Betterment's fraud meant to serve those without.
Hey guys, did you know some drivers are ditching their car insurance and they're doing this instead?
As discussed, SNAP is a government benefit that is funded by the American taxpayers. It was created to enable low-income households to obtain a more nutritious diet by increasing their purchasing power. What benefit did Fernandez think he needed other than to fill his pockets with stolen funds? While he is caught on camera with carts full of meats and groceries, we know that he was not simply trying to make ends meet and feed his family at home. He was using it for his restaurant that had paying customers. He was also having employees launder his illicit funds. He was unashamed and deliberate. His theft of government funds victimized all of us, American taxpayers. Today, these arrests are a symbol of justice, not only for those identities that were stolen and misused by Fernandez, nor hardworking families that had to go without because Fernandez stole from a limited pool of funds he was not entitled to, but for every American taxpayer who, in part, funded Fernandez's scheme of self-enrichment at the cost of those less fortunate than he. IRS CI Boston's office worked closely with our federal partners in this investigation. Whether it's complex transnational financial investigations or following the money in a federal benefits fraud scheme, we continue to use our expertise to follow the financial trails that lead to the perpetrators. And we will continue to work in tandem with our partners to ensure those fraudsters see justice for their illicit behaviors. Thank you.
Can we take some questions? You mentioned your previous announcement of $7 million in SNAP fraud, and this paperwork mentions that these defendants exploited online applications for SNAP benefits. Is there something that makes Massachusetts particularly vulnerable to this type of fraud?
So, yes, because any state that allows for online applications without verifying any ability to verify the documents that are being submitted are authentic is leaving itself open to abuse and to be defrauded. And there are easy steps that we can take in this age to make sure that when you apply for something and you say who you are and you say you are entitled to this, that you are going to submit the documents that are authentic and that will actually be checked to determine your actual qualifications.
Do they understand how many states do this? Same thing?
I don't. Anybody?
Online, all 50, plus U.S. territories.
Yep.
So all U.S. states and territories do operate using the electronic benefit system and the online portal to apply for SNAP benefits.
So is it just Massachusetts that's not authenticating? Yes, I'm just trying to clarify. U.S. Attorney program, is it unique to Massachusetts?
It's not unique to Massachusetts.
So other states are also authenticating whatever you're uploading onto these online applications.
So the online portal that people use to apply for SNAP benefits, that's across all 50 states and U.S. territories. They all virtually ask for the same information. So, you know, I would say years ago, there was a system where you would actually have to go into an office to apply. That system is now electronic, just with anything else, right? So if you think about, if you apply for a bank account, you could apply for a bank account at any financial institution online.
So Larry, can you talk about this? You say there's rampant. This is rampant. The court filing says that the total amount stolen by these individuals that are charged in Massachusetts was over 100, just over 100,000, 115,000, 325,000 in Rhode Island. And Rhode Island actually is the state officials that notified federal authorities. Is that right? So can you just
No.
Where is it that it's rampant? And there was some announcement this week by state authorities that they had, identified some fraud. So can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes. When the referrals were made from Rhode Island to Massachusetts, Massachusetts confirmed that $115,000 in fraudulent benefits had been dispersed. They turned those cards off. They did not make any referrals to any of these federal agencies or to the U.S. Attorney's Office so that we could go out and find the person who used stolen identities, because just shutting those off is not going to stop that person from going and obtaining new stolen identities and continuing the same fraud. And there are certain safeguards that certain states can implement to stem some of this fraud. For example, if there were a chip into these EBT cards, that would make it harder for people to counterfeit those cards and to use those cards to scam the taxpayers. That is, individual states get to decide whether they embed those chips or not. Massachusetts does not.
The other states do that?
There are some that do.
How many? You know?
Less than half a dozen.
Less than half a dozen have chips.
And this criticism is not directed solely at Massachusetts. I want to make that clear. We believe that this fraud is nationwide, and we are doing what we can to stop that from happening nationwide, because every taxpayer everywhere in this country is getting defrauded, not only in Massachusetts. And I have never given a press conference where I have not said, we want to work with state and locals and every federal agency to protect the public's interest. And this is in the public's interest. The public needs to know what its officials are doing to protect the taxpayer dollars.
So is that what you said earlier? Fraud is not hard to find if you don't even care to look. Is that what you're talking about?
This is day 1 of my husband doing Tai Chi walking workout. This is day 21 of my husband doing Tai Chi.
I wonder if you could expand and explain what you mean by that.
Well, when people are allowed to commit crimes with impunity, they are going to continue to do it. and others will do it because there's no consequence. So that is what I mean. When we say we are going after this, this is a presidential priority, and we are going to assist in making sure that that priority leads to the prosecution of criminals who are stealing from the taxpayers. And we would like everyone's cooperation in doing that.
So are you saying it's states that are not caring to look?
Whether they are not caring to look or whether they are not referring it so that somebody else can look into prosecutions, I don't know. But we, again, have an open dialogue, and we will partner with anyone to help identify and stop this fraud and hold people accountable who have stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from the taxpayers.
Can you talk a little bit more about how this started? You said that the state of Rhode Island, the state officials, how did they uncover it? Did they have a different system in place that they were able to notice this, and how they came to find out this was going on to actually report it to federal authorities?
My understanding, it was from an audit that was conducted by Rhode Island. And they noticed. And when these agencies work hand in hand with states across the country to help their OIGs and their departments that are responsible for maintaining these benefit programs and to dispersing the programs, what to look for to identify fraud. If you have 100 people who claim to live in 2 apartments, that's fraud. If you have hundreds of applications that are coming in from the same IP address, that's an indication of fraud, especially when that IP address isn't even in your state. Now, some of the recommendations that we could come up with could arise from the state level, and some might have to be coming down from the federal level. Whether states should be required to share their data in enrollees with each other to make sure that duplicative applications aren't coming in from multiple states. The affidavit refers to a victim who is in Massachusetts, who has a young child, who had SNAP benefits, and then had trouble getting SNAP benefits because someone had stolen her identity and applied for SNAP benefits somewhere else. Collectively, as a nation, we should do whatever we can to stop that from happening.
Massachusetts U.S. Attorney released the results of an audit she did last week, saying $12 million in public benefit fraud in fiscal year 25. Have you been in contact with her about working collaboratively?
Are you talking about the Massachusetts State Auditor?
Obviously, the auditor, not U.S. Attorney.
We have not spoken with the OIG or the inspectors general who were working with the auditor, but we welcome any referrals to our office. And if there's any collaboration we can do going forward with them to, again, not only identify it, but to prosecute the people who have committed crimes, we will do it. We will work with anyone.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much.
Okay, now I'm going to show the actual Ted Cruz-led judiciary hearing. And this was wild. I watched a clip of it, and they were going at it. So this should be more interesting. This is in Minnesota. This was 2 or 3 days ago. I would have showed it yesterday. I just didn't feel good. So
there are few crimes more morally repugnant than stealing from vulnerable children. Every dollar stolen is a meal not eaten, a doctor's visit missed, and a future diminished. Child welfare fraud plunders our children's potential and erodes our nation's future. And disturbingly, at the start of this new year, America has learned that this kind of thing was not occurring in some distant or lawless place, but in the heart of America's Midwest. Federal prosecutors in Minnesota now estimate that half or more of the $18 billion spent since 2018 across 14 Minnesota welfare programs may have been lost to fraud. If confirmed, the amount stolen would rank among the largest welfare frauds in American history. In Minnesota, a welfare system designed to uplift the most vulnerable children was treated like an open ATM, exploiting both taxpayers and the public trust extended to immigrant communities. Over the last decade, Minnesota Democrats didn't just fail to stop the fraud. They made it easy and profitable, and in a totally lawless fashion, silenced anyone who pointed it out. Taken together, the record shows that the fraud was not accidental or unforeseeable, but was the product of deliberate inaction, willful blindness, and calculated abuse. Today, we will proceed in three parts. First, we will show that Minnesota was clearly warned by journalists, by auditors, and by its own independent oversight bodies, and that the state responded by passing laws and promulgating safeguards intending to stop this abuse. Secondly, we will examine how Minnesota's Democrat leadership deliberately turned a blind eye, failed to enforce those safeguards, and in some cases retaliated against those who tried to sound the alarm. And third, we will explain how the fraud actually took place, the mechanics by which these schemes operated, and the very real harms they inflicted, not only on taxpayers, but on vulnerable children and on law-abiding Somali families whose trust and identities were exploited. First, Minnesota was warned. Let me be clear about one foundational fact. Minnesota was not caught unaware. Minnesota was warned repeatedly, unmistakably, and years in advance. This fraud did not arrive suddenly. It did not emerge from an unforeseen loophole, and it did not occur without notice. As far back as 2010, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel exposed widespread child care fraud across the upper Midwest in a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigation that sent a clear warning to regulators, providers, and the child care industry as a whole. Without strong oversight and verification, fraud would flourish. Minnesota was on notice. Nearly a decade later, those warnings were no longer journalistic. Now, they were official. In 2019, the Minnesota Office of the Legislative Auditor issued a formal report examining Minnesota's Child Care Assistant Program, the CCAP. The legislative auditor identified serious deficiencies in oversight, including inadequate attendance verification, weak financial controls, fragmented enforcement, and an over-reliance on provider self-reliance, that these conditions created a high risk of fraud. Critically, the auditor estimated that approximately $100 million of child care assistant programs funds had already been lost political necessity. The report landed just months after they won their new majority in the state legislature in the 2018 elections. Faced with a damning audit and mounting political pressure, Democrats acted, on paper at least. Following the 2019 report, the legislature amended CCAP statutes and promulgated new enforcement policies designed to close precisely the gaps the auditor had identified. By 2019, Minnesota had the warnings, the audit findings, and a panoply of legal authorities to detect, stop, suspend, and prosecute fraud.
Looking for tax help? Now there are TurboTax experts right in your neighborhood.
But that brings us to the second part of the story. Democrat leadership ignored the law they had just passed, attacked whistleblowers, and failed to enforce it. Once Minnesota had been warned, and once Minnesota Democrats wrote the solution into law, the duty was clear: enforce the law. Instead, they treated legislation as a press release, not a mandate, providing political cover while allowing the money to keep flowing. Federal audits later confirmed what internal staff had warned all along. Minnesota failed to verify attendance, failed to use its suspension authority, and failed to intervene early when red flags appeared. What's worse, rather than go after the fraudsters, the state went after the whistleblowers. On January 31st, 2026, the Minnesota Star Tribune reported that staff at the Minnesota Department of Human Services repeatedly flagged fraud risks and lax safeguards, only to have those concerns ignored, dismissed, or met with retaliation. According to that reporting, current and former DHS employees sent an anonymous letter to the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Accountability describing serious and systemic failures dating back to at least 2019. Employees reported being reassigned, called racist and xenophobic, sidelined, excluded from key discussions, and in some cases subjected to what they described as threats or workplace surveillance after raising red flags. Minnesota's Democrat leaders did not reward integrity. Instead, they punished it. When bipartisan legislation was introduced to establish an independent inspector general, Minnesota Democrats blocked it. The Democrat House Speaker at the time explained why. An inspector general, quote, is not part of the budget framework, citing an $18 million cost over 4 years. As billions were being pilfered by fraud and as whistleblowers were being silenced and punished, Minnesota Democrats had the gall to say that an inspector general costing only $4.5 million a year was too expensive. That wasn't fiscal prudence, that was a choice. It was willful blindness. The programs move billions of dollars each year, and they're concentrated within a relatively small number of administrative pipelines. Minnesota's Somali community receives welfare benefits at rates far higher than the state average, making these programs both financially significant and politically sensitive. In a state where the two closest statewide elections were decided by less than 1%, the Somali community votes overwhelmingly Democrat. The numbers are stark. 81% of Somali households in Minnesota receive some form of welfare, 81%, compared to 21% of non-Somali households. 54% of Somali households receive food stamps compared to 7% of non-Somali households. 73% are enrolled in Medicaid compared to 18% of non-Somali households. And 27% receive cash assistance compared to 6% of non-Somali households. In December 2025, Minneapolis resident David Hoke, who's here today, accompanied by journalist Nick Shirley, visited child care centers, autism clinics, and healthcare facilities across Minneapolis. They went on a Tuesday. Not a Saturday, not a holiday, not in the middle of the night. Tuesday during the day. What they found, blacked out windows, misspelled or non-existent signage. I will say we will always remember the Leering Center that promoted good leering. Multiple, quote, providers registered to the same address and no kids present. It's amazing having childcare centers and autism centers with no kids. And by the way, it's not subtle. You walk up, there's no toys, there's no kids, and the windows are blacked out. This is not hidden. It is obvious, except for the Democrats that didn't want to see it. Had the state done its job, had it sent inspectors instead of press releases, that fraud would have been obvious. To understand just how calculated this fraud became, consider the most disturbing example of all. In September 2025, federal prosecutors charged Asha Farhan Hassan for orchestrating a $14 million fraud scheme against Minnesota's EIDBI autism program. The program exists to provide medically necessary early and intensive care to children with autism. Fraudsters turned it into a profit engine. According to the charges, Hassan and her partners recruited children from the Somali community, paid parents cash kickbacks, used unqualified individuals as quote-unquote therapists, and billed Medicaid for services never provided or grossly inflated. Where a child did not already have an autism diagnosis, the scheme allegedly worked to obtain one. In other words, there was no child they could not qualify because the diagnosis itself became the means to an end. According to the University of Minnesota, 1 in 12 8-year-old Somali children in Minnesota was diagnosed with autism, compared with 1 in 28 non-Somali children statewide. In Minnesota, Somali children are 7 times more likely than their non-Somali peers to receive autism quote-unquote treatment. These figures show extraordinary concentration and extraordinary billing, the precise conditions fraudsters exploit. And here's the deepest human cost. Telling an immigrant child that he has autism, not because he does, but because someone wants to get paid. Imagine the weight of that diagnosis on parents who may not speak English fluently, who trust authority, who believe the government would never lie about their child's health. That label could follow a child for life, shaping education, self-image, and opportunity. Doing that for financial enrichment is not merely fraud, it is the deliberate exploitation of children and the calculated betrayal of parents. And once fraud proceeds are laundered and sent overseas, in 2023, the Somali diaspora sent nearly $2 billion back to Somalia. Once they're sent overseas, they're effectively unrecoverable. Meanwhile, Al-Shabaab, the U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization and Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Somalia, controls large swaths of territory and systematically extorts money moving through its financial channels. When billions of dollars are stolen from U.S. welfare programs and sent abroad, there is no credible way to ensure those funds do not enrich jihadists within Al-Shabaab. As one confidential source told the Manhattan Institute, the largest funder of Al-Shabaab, a Islamist terrorist organization in Somalia, is the Minnesota taxpayer. Listen to that again. The single largest funder of Al-Shabaab, a terrorist organization in Somalia, is the taxpayers of Minnesota. Taken together, the evidence before this committee leads to one unavoidable conclusion. Minnesota was warned. Minnesota's Democrat leadership failed to enforce the laws it passed, and that failure allowed organized fraud to flourish, harming children, betraying families, and robbing the public of trust and resources. This hearing is necessary because Minnesota's elected Democrats were complicit in this fraud. They stood to benefit politically from looking the other way as fraudsters robbed the taxpayers of Minnesota.
Hey, husbands, Valentine's Day is coming, and if you found the love of your life, get her this. It comes in a heart-stopping red rose surprise.
Look at the bench of witnesses.
I don't know why, bro. Like, yo, you're being cool, salty, but you're just like saying too much, bro. Or sassy, whatever your name is. You're saying too much, bro. For real. How many families or children settled out of courts within, like, come on, bro. Are you kidding? Why don't you tell us, sassy? Why don't you tell us? You asked us. Why don't you tell us? If you know the stats, tell us. And I will fact check you, bro. But tell me the stats, homie. What are they? Since you know so much, look it up, bro. That's what I'm saying. Look it up. You know so much, dude. You're in here just saying stuff that makes no sense, bro. I don't know what to tell you. I'm done showing this for now. I'll talk to y'all for a minute, but I'm done with this. I will talk. No, I do want the truth, but what you're saying is very watered down and cherry picked, bro. You could say that about anybody. And you're just specifically talking about one person. Like you're focused on, you're hyper focused on one person. As you're talking about, we all need to come together away from the divide, as you're focusing on one person. Do you not see the disconnect, bro? You're not giving us the truth. You're giving us your opinion. You're giving us your emotions, not truth. Truth would be, here's the stats, bro. But you don't do that. That's not giving nobody truth, homie. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying, bro. Bye. I don't need your sub, homie. Bye. Ryan, if you want to undo them, you can, bro. But I don't need that sub, man. At all. At all. Tanya said, Salty, you are correct that I'm dirt poor, so I really don't know. Kidding me, dude. People be calling you in the middle of your live stream. Like, they don't call you. They don't look at their damn thing before they call you, bro. Come on. If you're friends with me and you call me in the middle of my live stream, please, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you, dude? Come on. Like, you can't check first? You called me 3 times in a row. I'm not rich either. I raised 4 daughters without any help whatsoever. They are all grown. That's what's up, bro. Come on now. Hey, man, this ain't, look, no person gets this mad an opinion without being mentally unstable. No, bro, he's using trigger words in the chat that were just goofy, bro. Love you, Ari. You can't call me in the middle. It slows down my internet. It slows down my stuff right now. But I'm getting off anyway, so I'll call you here. I'm about to get off. What I'll do is I'll pop back on and show the rest of this later on tonight or something. Because this is lightweight pointless anyways. Yeah, Sassy wasn't all the way right, bro. Sassy wasn't all the way right. He was playing the side. He was playing one side, but he was really spitting on the other side. I was done reading it, bro. He was saying trigger words. He was spitting stuff on the other side. I would much definitely, we all want the truth, but nobody here wants to hear stuff. If you're not going to give an answer, but just sit there and spit out liberal freaking one-liners, and nobody cares, bro. Every single one of us have been hurt at all. Every one of us, dude. Every one of us. I love you, little sissy. I love you too. I'm sorry. I'm just like over here, guy. Glad you noticed because I caught it right up. No, I did too, Salty. And the whole time I'm sitting there going, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But the whole time in the back of my head, I said, he's not going to make it too long. He said everything good coming in and then slowly just worked his way into that box. I'm like, okay, bro. I'd rather get off than hear that, dude. Tanya's definitely a good woman. Salty, I'm glad that you came in. What's up, Turbo, man? You doing all right? Yeah, Sassy's got the main character syndrome. He wanted to run that chat like you was saying everything. You could go ahead and do what you do, Sassy, but bruh, come on, man. I was dumbfounded until it got obvious. I hear you. I hear you. All right. I tried to explain to Sassy what was being discussed. Didn't want to hear it. Yeah, he didn't want to understand that these are politicians being held accountable. It's not just billionaires, dude. And not every rich person is bad. And then, like, it's just like, what, dude? You're like talking about trying to do the left, right, not divide and conquer. He said all that stuff and then backs it up with all those comments. It's like, okay, dude, you don't know a damn thing about yourself. But I'm going to leave it at that. I hope everybody's hit the like. Are we at 50? Nah, we good, though. It's all right. I'll be back through. Much love, y'all. I'm out. Peace. I just did 3 for a piece. Peace. Hold on. Let me get this one up there. I want this to be the headliner. And then I'm out. Oh yeah, no problem, Tanya. Thanks for coming in. Thank you, Dawn. Salty. Oh yeah. Thank you for popping through. Ryan, little sis, if you're there. Thank you for checking on you, bro. Man, get me out of here. Want a good screensaver. Peace out. Much love. If I'm not back on. Oh, I didn't bring it up. Peace out. Much love. If I'm not back on. Go Cavs. What's up, lady love? How you doing? Catch you on the flip. Yo, catch you on the flip, my son. I can sniff. Yeah, hey, real fast. I can sniff a liberal from a mile away too, bro. I can smell them from a mile away, man. I try to let y'all have that. Say what you. Oh, you're not going to give us freedom of speech, nah, because you end up saying stupid stuff every time, and that's why. But all right. That being said, hope everybody has a good day. I'm up out of here. Much love. Deuces.